All right. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for the time slot to present on the Oregon Travel Study. Today, we're going to go over a little bit of the study timeline, provide an overview, status update on the deliverables as well. And I'll try to be a little bit brief on some of these details just for time. And if anyone has any questions or interests, happy to share the relevant information. And we do have some final reports coming later this year. So the Oregon Travel Study is headed by the Travel Survey Subcommittee, part of the OMSC, Joe Broach from Metro, myself from ODOT, and Kelly Clark from ALCOG. So the goal here is to develop a planning framework for conducting a household travel behavior survey. And we know we're definitely interested in learning from the national peers, working collaboratively with different parts of Oregon to make sure that everyone who may benefit from this has some say and input on, how it's done and they can get the best information out of it, as well as conversations on, the frequency and recurring survey, how much do we want this to be done and to what extent. So this version of the study, previously the household activity survey was done in 2010, 2012. So this one really started getting funding and everyone together around 2019 through 2021. And then in 2021, 2022, the consultant RSG was hired. They conducted survey scoping, design, and testing, as well as a pre-survey to test out some of the methods. Then 2023 through 2024, the actual survey data collection was conducted. And then since then, continuing on through 2026, there's been processing of that data and the various deliverables being done. So a little more detail on some of these deliverables timeline that are remaining. We've received qualitative interviews. Those have been done this summer. We just got the weighted data set after a first round of revisions in this October. The dashboard visualization tool for users to look at the data, that's looking to be completed in November. The final agency report slated for December. And then a couple other extended deliverables such as time study and data processing for model estimation. Those are slated for sometime in 2026. And a couple other enhanced survey processing, including improved trip synthesis procedures in October, bike route map matching November, and comparing the current and previous study to get a sense of the trends and changes in travel behavior. That's currently slated for November. So RSG, they were the survey contractor for this iteration. And it was great having them incorporate a lot of the modern best practices for household surveys, including using smartphones for data collection. They have quite a bit of experience in recurrent surveys, so having that insight has been very helpful for us in our conversations. Innovative sampling methods to address declining response rates, getting people to improve their responses. One of those, just off the top of my head, was improving the images and the branding around the study. And one thing they found actually from the pre-study was actually using the word study was more, people were more interested and more likely to respond compared to survey. So that's part of the branding. It was the Oregon Travel Study. Compared to previously, it was called the Oregon Household Activity Survey. They also brought an increased focus on improving equity, representation. I'll talk about that a little more, how to reach certain hard to reach groups and get their input on the data. Sometimes certain groups or demographics can be missed by household travel surveys. And they also, they're very knowledgeable on data privacy standards and adapting the survey questionnaires to capture current and evolving behaviors, especially around things like remote work and micromobility. So a big innovation on this iteration of the study was using smartphone app-based data collection. This was done through the app RMove, and it allowed to capture more detailed demographic information and more detailed trip paths, as well as traces. And a big innovation over the previous study was the smartphone app allowed us to capture week-long travel periods rather than just a single day, which most travel studies are based on. So we have much more data and better quality data based on the smartphone app-based data. Besides that, participants were also able to use an online browser or a call center for submitting their data. So what data was collected? Traditional survey data, including household demographics, person demographics, vehicle details, and trip details. Things like the origin destination, what time it was, the trip purpose, all the good things we need to know about trips for our travel behavior models. And this survey also brought in some supplemental data, including transportation network company usage, like Uber, Lyft, ride shares, data around bicycle types and inventories, people's comfort levels, their attitudes towards bikes. Similarly for electric vehicles, people's attitudes, interests, as well as ownership rates. And additionally, some data on home deliveries and household trips that have been replaced by online shopping. So with that survey completed in July 2024, we had over 850,000 households invited, with more than 22,000 actually participating. So this is pretty standard for the industry, about 2.5% response rate. And about 50% of those 22,000 households participated via the 7-day smartphone app, Our Move. So overall, we have over 178,000 travel days and 700,000 trips, and over 40,000 vehicles. This survey was able to capture a lot of new details and emerging trends, including weekend trips, e-bike trips, ride hail, EVs, and remote work, and more that we are still sort of processing and turning into results. So here's just a nice little heat map to show you the representation of households included in the survey across the state. So you can see it's pretty well distributed throughout, definitely with more households participating in those high population areas, Portland, Eugene, Bend, and the Willamette Valley, and the Rogue Valley. So a couple of stats, and these are just preliminary. I crunched these this morning. These are unweighted, so these are only stats among the surveyed households, not necessarily representative for the whole state, like we want to use for a travel behavior model. So these are just for fun. I wanted to showcase a little bit of what we have and maybe whet some people's appetites for data that we can pull out of this study. So the average household trips per day across the state is looking at about 17.8 trips per day. The average number of motor vehicles, 1.7 per household. Similarly for bikes, and that's children's and adults' bikes, 1.5 bikes per household. Very interesting stat that I'm sure a lot of people will be dissecting different ways. The average days of telework per week. So among those who are employed full-time or self-employed, it's looking about 1.8 days per week are telework. So a couple of trip distance details. A linked trip, that could be like a combined trip, like maybe you're going to the grocery store before you go to work or after work, or on the way to drop your kids off at school. Linked trips can be pretty complicated. But the average amongst all the linked trips was 9.2 miles. Whereas for unlinked trip, just single legs of that, just going to the grocery store from home, or just going from home to the school before you do some other trips, that distance was about 8.8 miles. Average travelers per unlinked trip, 1.86 people per trip. And this is not dissected by mode yet. That's definitely a very interesting stat, especially for commuting and those types of calculations. And the household vehicle counts, the percent of EVs amongst all the vehicles is about 3.1%. Slightly higher, 4.3% if you include plug-in hybrid in that number. Was there a question?
Just real quick, that first one, trips per day, is definitely higher than any other survey. I'm assuming that's unlinked trips. I think we typically do linked trips. Do you happen to know if that's linked or unlinked?
This is unlinked trips, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, maybe that's not the right way to look at it, but these are just some interesting things I could think of this morning. Okay, so before the survey was conducted, there was some outreach to specific focus groups to try to capture more representative sample and thinking about hard to reach populations. So this targeted outreach was conducted with underrepresented groups, including Rogue Valley Chapter Unite Oregon, Latinx Youth, the Black Community of Portland, a community organization, as well as disability advocates. And this feedback, which helped structure some of the questions and design of the study, included a desire from individuals for a better description of the study, why is it important, help them understand the actual uses rather than just being another survey that they have to fill out and give away their data. People really want to know more what is going on and what's it going to be used for. Safety on transit and sidewalks is a big concern, and we'll see that in some of the qualitative interviews as well. People are interested in these things, but safety can be a major concern that can hold them back from engaging in active modes or transit. There was a bit of a sentiment of fear of the government and police violence, and partially linked to worries about being involved in a study that's going to be giving detailed information about where you're going and what your purposes are. Some people felt reluctant to engage in that because of distrust or fear of the government and worry about privacy concerns and what this data could be used for. Another common response was that the initial incentives were too low, so those were bumped up a little bit for the actual study. The survey mail, some people said it looked like junk, so there's quite a bit of design improvements on that, making it look more official with a common color scheme and images that are easy to understand. Concern about location tracking as part of the study. And lastly, there was some suggestions to use social media for marketing and hold informational sessions and workshops. So again, people are, they're curious about this kind of stuff, but they want to know more before they feel ready to fully engage with it. So fortunately, there was quite a bit of savings over the lifetime of the project, about $500,000. And this savings led to several additional works and expansions of works for the study, including increased resources for developing the weights, documenting methodology, increased resources for developing the final report aimed at non-technical readers. Similarly, increased resources to develop the data visualization tool, an online dashboard where people can review summaries of the data, create their own tabulations, as well as look at some maps of origin destinations. And a couple of new tasks were able to be conducted with the savings, including qualitative in-depth interviews to try to learn more about underrepresented groups and less common modes, fill in some of those blind spots that may happen from just looking at the data. A new task looking at the value of time. And lastly, improved work on bike route matching, trip synthesis, and comparing the survey to the previous survey, and post-processing, getting the data fully ready and shaped for the use in activity-based models. Was there a question or? Okay, no worries. So the data visualization access tool is still in development. We have a second round of feedback with a lot of users right now. This should be wrapped up in November and hopefully available shortly after that. But this is designed to cater to the medium sophistication user. Someone who wants to know more about the data, maybe they want to know some regional statistics, or they want to, slice and dice the data on their own without downloading the raw data themselves and engaging in it in that way. So it's meant to be pretty accessible and user-friendly. I imagine the public will be very interested in this tool. So you can look at, mode share, trip purpose, how that varies by different demographics. You can pull up any of the variables in the study and then filter them based on various categories, including income, household size, whatever you may be interested in. And there are also maps where we can see that data at a geographic level and look at differences across regions. I heard some muffled noise. I don't know if that was a question or.
So the other room. Yeah, we're next to a party room. Sorry about that.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I'll ignore the party room. My mistake. So a little more detail on the in-depth qualitative interviews. Maybe I won't go over all of these. Just save some time. I'll kind of go briefly through them. But this was a very helpful insight that was possible because of the savings on the study. So 100 participants that were in the original survey sample were selected and targeted based on a variety of income, land use density, and demographics to try to get a good representation. And the purpose of these questions was to explore uncommon travel behavior and uncover the underlying factors. Really ask why questions. Why are you doing this, or what's stopping you from doing that? So the questions were really designed to elicit narratives and insights, people's travel stories to explain themselves and their thoughts and motivations, barriers and preferences as well. and with the goal of hopefully providing actionable recommendations. So I pulled a couple summary slides. I won't go through all of this, but just if you're interested in this, please let me know. Happy to share the report. So some of the key findings on public transportation accessibility and limitations. People are definitely interested in transit. One of the key findings was urban transit strengths with gaps. People they love transit when it works for them. And that has to do with the time of coverage, has to do with the frequency, as well as the spatial coverage. Does the route reach the areas they need to go? Is it easy for them to access? People are definitely interested in it when it's convenient. They like that it's environmentally friendly, they like that it can be low cost. But again, when it works is a very big clause. Inconsistent service frequency, limited evening hours often make it impractical, especially for those with atypical schedules. People have to work multiple jobs, or have to work late at night, or have to go very far distances. Another concern is safety. Concerns about crime, aggressive behavior on public transit, particularly on the MAX. People say that heavily deters their ridership. On the silver lining, though, people do tend to feel safer when there's a visible presence and vigilance of drivers on the bus. Similarly, for active transportation, there's a lot of interest and people like the idea of it, but when it works for them. And what doesn't work for people, a common theme was the lack of infrastructure, especially in rural and suburban areas where people are faced with close proximity to high-speed traffic, having to go long distances in high stress or uncomfortable environments, having limited safe pathways. These are major hurdles for folks engaging in active transportation. So the infrastructure gaps and safety is another factor in that. Areas with poorly lit areas, unprotected bike lanes, dangerous intersections, either with high speeds or wide crossings with limited sort of safety points, and inadequate pedestrian infrastructure. Many said they would bike more if protected lanes and safety improvements were in place. So people are interested in it, they like the idea of it, but there's a desire for more investment. Additionally, there is a bit of an equity and affordability issue around active transportation. While interested in bike share scooters, sort of micro-mobility modes is growing, cost is definitely still a barrier, especially for low-income residents. They responded that they did, however, utilize free passes or incentive programs, and they suggested that it would be a good way to increase and continue to increase their use. So I already touched on this a bit, safety concerns for both transit as well as active modes, but also even among vehicle drivers. People express a sort of widespread driving anxiety, feeling unsafe due to aggressive driver behavior, speeding, road rage, distracted driving, poor road conditions, and lack of law enforcement. Some even say they limit their travel to daytime hours or good weather conditions to feel safer. Nobody asked me, I wasn't in the survey, but for my part, I'll also add, headlights are a huge factor for me when I drive. The new headlights are so bright, and especially at night, it can be very hard to drive and it can feel unsafe. People talk about inadequate lighting across all regions and modes of transportation. Poor lighting on roads, highways, transit stops is a common concern. And again, it causes many to avoid traveling at night due to that low visibility and heightened vulnerability. So transportation costs is a big factor in transportation choices. People talk about high fuel, maintenance, or ride share, leading many to actually reduce their travel frequency, consolidate their trips, and when it works, seek more affordable modes like public transit, walking, or biking. But again, limited access to alternatives can be a big barrier to engaging in these lower cost-effective options. And many people actually engage in strategic and cost-conscious travel behavior, planning out their trips to maximize discounts, free ride programs, or delivery deals, or even working with their community. Some people express a strong preference for personal vehicles, partly due to convenience, comfort, but also the infrastructure around them. Especially in suburban and urban area or suburban and rural areas, people feel like it's a car-centric world they're in, so that contributes to their preference for using their car. That convenience and controlling the drive usage. They have more flexibility It can be more reliable than transit or some other modes, and it can be more time efficient. So again, the situational dependence remains high for alternative modes of transportation besides motor vehicles. Last slide here on this, the uncommon transportation and community support. In some areas, carpooling and community-oriented travel is a big part of their day-to-day. Things like community transit services or medical assisted transportation. These are pretty significant for a lot of folks. Ready Ride and Lyft, a lot of folks said they play a crucial role for them, especially if they have disabilities or they're older or they don't have access to a personal vehicle. I know in my town, Ashland, there's actually quite a bit of aging population. So a lot of folks are looking for other ways to get around. And there's a lot of interest in that. And again, family and caregiving shape responsibilities related to the when it works and when it's convenient and safe for alternate modes of transportation or transit. Households with children or caregiving duties often avoid public transit due to safety or logistical concerns, which can lead them to rely on a single shared vehicle or coordinated travel with friends and family. So on the horizon, we have some continuing efforts to make sure the process data meets the modeling needs. We're wrapping up a review of the deliverables for the weighted data, as well as the visualization tool. And we should be getting some more of these other deliverables soon, including the final report and enhanced data processing. We're also continuing our discussions on how and where to store the data, potentially with a transportation secure data center, which would be great for being publicly available and hopefully, permanently there. And we're also starting our conversations on future surveys. How frequently should we do it? How much can we take advantage of the methods and infrastructure we've built up through this survey? So that's it for on the Oregon travel study. Happy to answer any more questions, and thank you.